The story begins with Professor Baum, who is researching invisible, microscopic creatures in the forest. He sees a small bird fall from the sky. When he catches it, he is amazed by its tiny reins and finery. Meanwhile, a strange and terrifying creature riding a bogan crow is attempting to kill a small human named Nod. Nod desperately tries to escape. Just then, their leader Ronan arrives. The creature attempts to grab Nod and carry him away. However, Ronan jumps on him from above, knocking him down, and offers to rescue Note and take him to his hometown, Moonhaven. The strange creature, which runs out of control, is hit by a car and dies. In the same car is a girl named Mary, who arrives at her father, Professor Baum, after many years. When she calls out to him without a response, she goes inside, where she discovers insect bones and strange research specimens. Then she meets her father, who is completely immersed in his research and work. Professor Baum has a pet dog named Ozzy, who is missing one eye and one leg. The professor takes his daughter Mary to show him his room, but then his tracker activates. He excitedly tells Mary, "Today is a very special day for me," and immediately leaves. He sets about searching for the tiny creatures through footage from cameras installed throughout the forest. Meanwhile, Ronan arrives with his soldiers to Queen Tara in Moonhaven City, Besa. He alerts the Queen that enemy bogans have entered the territory and must be stopped on this crucial day in CC. It's the day for the Queen to choose a new bud who will become her successor. The Queen possesses the magical power to control nature, keeping the entire forest alive and lush. Meanwhile, Dagon, son of King Mandrake of the Bogans, returns to his father and informs him that he has discovered the secret location where the bud-picking festival is to be held today. Mandrake hates the forest in Chicosa's greenery and wants to turn it into a decaying graveyard so that he can rule Bevista. He dries up the trees with his destructive powers and reveals his plan. If the Queen dies without choosing an heir, the forest's balance will be disrupted and the Bogan's darkness will engulf the entire kingdom. Nod arrives at the Leafman's hideout, where Ronan urges him to rejoin the team and understand his responsibilities. But Nod, demonstrating his rebellious nature, says that he is now grown up and no longer bound by anyone's constraints. With this, he leaves. Ronan then orders his army to fly on birds to protect the Queen, who is riding her chariot toward the bud-picking festival, Festival. Meanwhile, Mary comes out of the house looking for her father, Professor Baum, and finds him installing a camera on a tree. The professor tells her that he has installed a network of cameras throughout the forest. Mary sarcastically retorts that he still lives under the misconception that a modern society of small people lives in the forest. The professor firmly replies that they do indeed exist and protect the environment. He explains to Mary how birds communicate through their calls and shows her a special device he has created. When Mary asks why they can't be seen, the professor explains that they are very agile. The professor offers to work with Mary, but Mary, upset, tells him to stop all this madness. Just then, the professor's tracker starts ringing again, and he frantically runs back into the forest, wanting just one last piece of proof. Makes the meta. Mary is deeply disappointed by this, feeling that her father doesn't have time for her. So she decides to leave home and return, leaving a farewell note for them. Just then, her dog, Ozzy, suddenly runs off into the forest chasing something, and Mary runs after him to retrieve it. Meanwhile, Queen Tara arrives at the banks of the river, where flower buds are strewn about to welcome her. Seeing a tiny bud tells her, "I will grow up to be a queen like you." The queen begins searching for the most worthy bud to choose as her successor. Meanwhile, two snails named Mub and Grub are waiting for her. When the queen asks them to show her a bud, they offer their choice of buds. But the queen takes a liking to a small shiny bud and chooses it to bestow her power. Just then, Ronan on guard notices that the leaves on the trees are suddenly rotting. He immediately shoots an arrow, revealing that the Bogan army was disguised as tree bark. In no time, the entire Bogan army attacks. Ronan and the Leafmen fight them, but the Bogan's real target is Queen Tara. The queen speeds away in her chariot, but the enemies begin to jump over her. In the chaos, a Bogan warrior attacks Ronan, trapping him so the others can reach the queen. The Bogans surround Queen Tara, but the queen bravely escapes, using her natural powers to block the path with bushes. No case. The Leafman soldiers risk their lives to hold off the enemies. Meanwhile, Mary, searching for her dog, OG, arrives in the same part of the forest. There, the Bogan's king, Mandrake, attacks with his son, Dagon. Mandrake orders Dagon to capture Kali. The queen uses her powers to fend off the Bogans. Ronan arrives and tries to rescue the queen, but Mandrake and Dagon attack them. In a fierce battle, Ronan kills Dagon. However, in the chaos, a deadly arrow from Mandrake hits the queen. The injured Rani begins to fall from a height, leaving Mary standing nearby, stunned. As she dies, Rani transfers her magical powers to the bud, entrusting it to Mary. As soon as Mary touches the bud, the magic powers shrink and she becomes a part of their world. Mary, terrified, rushes to Rani, saying they need a doctor. But Rani, in her final breath, instructs her to deliver the bud to Nimgalu. Just then, Ronan and other soldiers arrive, and Rani dies in Ronan's arms. As she leaves her life, the surrounding greenery turns black, signaling the impending doom for the entire forest. Ronan is in shock after Queen Tara's death. He asks Mary, "Did Rani say anything to you?" MK explains that she spoke of someone named Nimgalu. Ronan entrusts his soldiers with the security of the town, and decides to take the bud to Nimgalu himself. Meanwhile, MK realizes she's shrunk and is terrified. Asmide. She begs Ronan to make her big again. Just then, the snails Mub and Grub arrive and explain that without them, the magical bud will wither away as they are its protectors. Ronan is forced to take them along, and MK, hoping to return home, they all ride on birds and set off in search of Nimgasulu. Meanwhile, Nod is conducting a bird race in another part of the forest, a girl gives him a tough fight, but Nod cleverly wins. However, the frog betting there is angry because Nod was deliberately told to lose. Just then, Ronan arrives and rescues Nod from the frog's clutches. Ronan, with a heavy heart, tells Nod that the queen has died in the attack. Hearing this, Nod is stunned and asks who will save the forest now. How? Ronan explains that if the bud isn't delivered to Nimgalu by sunrise tomorrow, the entire forest will be destroyed. He orders Nod to accompany him. A frog overhears their conversation and MK appears. Professor Baum returns home, excited to tell Mary about the great commotion in the forest. But then he stumbles upon a letter Mary left behind. He feels as if Mary has left him forever and becomes deeply saddened. Meanwhile, the now young Mary is traveling with Nod on a bird while Ronan continues with the snails, Mub and Grub, policemen. Along the way, they discover that the forest's vegetation is rapidly decaying due to Queen Tara's death, and the only way to save it is the magical bud. Suddenly, they are attacked by a flock of Bogan's pet bats. Guardian trying to escape, Nod and Mary fall into a deep burrow. Nod tells Mary to remain silent. Just then, a large rat emerges from the darkness. Mary initially thinks it's innocent, but it suddenly attacks. Nod quickly climbs out of the burrow, while Mary struggles momentarily, shielding herself from the rat. However, while trying to jump up again, her head hits a root, knocking her unconscious. Yes. Nod jumps back down to save her and distracts the rat. However, the rat grabs him with its tail. Just as the rat is about to attack, Ronan arrives just in time and drives it away, and Mary regains consciousness. Ronan, now erring on the side of caution, asks Mary to come with him, entrusting Nod with the responsibility of protecting the snails, Mub and Grub. Grub jokingly warns Nod, "That girl has a crush on me, so you should stay away from her." Meanwhile, the Boggans are rapidly destroying the forest's greenery. Just then, the same greedy frog, whom Mandrake inquired about the magic bud, arrives. Upon hearing the news of the bud's safety, Mandrake, enraged, uses his power to tear down a tree. The frog then betrays him, revealing that they are taking the bud to Nimgalu Milu. Ronan, MK, Nod, and Snail sneak toward the giant tree where all the forest creatures, frightened by the decay, have sought refuge under Nimgalu. Ronan explains that Nimgalu is the forest's oldest and most knowledgeable historian. When Nimgalu emerges, he sees that Queen Tara is no more and the entire forest is in danger. He is perplexed as to what to say to the people. Just then, Ronan approaches him. Nimgalu talks about hiding the bud safely, but MK tells him that the queen herself ordered him to deliver the bud to Nimgalu. Nimgalu is initially unsure about what to do with the bud, so he takes them all inside his magical library, where every event in the forest's past, future, and present is documented. Nimgalu searches through ancient books and letters for information about the bud. They discover that if the queen is chosen, it is destined to bloom tonight under the full moonlight. Grub, curious, asks, "What if it blooms in the dark?" But Galu explains that half of the information is missing, posing a danger. Meanwhile, Mary asks for directions home, and Nimgalu shows her a special magical diagram that reveals a message from Queen Tara. The Queen's shadow tells Mary that the bud needs her and that there is a greater purpose for her being here. She explains that only when the bud blooms in the moonlight will Mary return to her true form. Hearing this, Mary is overjoyed that she will be able to return home. Ronan leaves, entrusting Nod with the bud. Nimgalu tells everyone that even though Queen Tara is no more, tonight is the time to celebrate the election of a new queen, as Kali will bring new life. Meanwhile, Nod takes Mary to a quiet spot and shows her a huge deer, which, despite its small size, appears as large as a mountain. Nod sits on the deer's back, and Mary joins him. The two enjoy the ride and chat. Meanwhile, Ronan sends a secret message to the palace and the Leafman army through fireflies, telling them that Kali is safe and that they are heading to Moonhaven. The fireflies relay the message to the Leafmen throughout the forest. Meanwhile, Nod and Mary enjoy the deer ride, while Snails and Grubicle take care of Kali to maintain her moisture. Suddenly, Mandrake, king of the Bogans, attacks the area on his ferocious, strange creature. Mandrake's panic sends everyone scattering, and he seizes the opportunity to kidnap Mub, Grub, and the magical bud. Ronan tries to stop them, but Mandrake's attack is so powerful that the path is blocked by debris. Ronan is so furious with Nod for failing to fulfill his responsibility. To rescue the bud, they decide to go to Rattenwood, the dark realm of the Bogans. But to get there without being caught, they need disguises like Bogans. Mary remembers that her father keeps a Bogan armor for research and takes them to her home. Arriving at Professor Baum's house, they go to his desk. When Mary jumps down, she lands directly next to her father. There, Nod, seeing the professor, remarks, this guy is still here. We always jammed his cameras and kept him away from our city so he can never find us. Hearing these words about her father, Mary becomes emotional and proudly declares, I am this man's daughter. Meanwhile, Mandrake, keeping the bud at his hideout, tells Mub and Grub that he has discovered the secret of the torn page. If the bud blooms in the dark, it will produce an heir who will destroy the entire forest beauty. Ronan and Nod begin collecting the Bogan's armor from Professor Baum's desk. Mary goes to her father and tries to call out to him, but the professor, being small, cannot hear. Just then, his dog Ozzy arrives and, seeing Mary, starts chasing her. Ronan and Nod also run to escape Ozzy. The professor senses a commotion and turns on his machine cleaner, Duria. Ronan deftly shoots an arrow at the professor, causing Ozzy to spill his teacup, giving them a chance to escape. However, the professor catches Mary with his machine. When the professor examines Mary closely through his special binoculars, he faints in shock at seeing his daughter so small. Mary breaks free, says I'm sorry to her father, and Sakomekrondapi, leaving a marker of her location on his map. Ronan, Nod, and Mary then disguise themselves as Bogans and enter their dark territory, Rattonwood. There, Mandrake has imprisoned Mub and Grub in a cage-like burrow. Mary panics when she sees bats all around. Ronan devises a plan to distract the Bogans while Nod and Mary secretly rescue Kali, Ali. Nod and Mary follow the sticky trail left by the snails and reach Mub and Grub, freeing them. However, a Bogan soldier and his companions spot them carrying Kali and begin their pursuit. Ronan encounters Mandrake directly in the Bogan's territory. Mandrake proudly declares that he will deal with them alone, and a fierce battle ensues between them. Meanwhile, Nod and Marie attempt to escape with the bud, but the Bogan soldiers surround them. Nod fights valiantly, defeating the Bogans. Enraged, Mandrake orders all his troops to attack simultaneously. Ronan single-handedly holds off the Bogan army, and Nod tells Marie to take the bud and leave immediately. Nod, Marie, and the snails ride on birds and safely reach Moonhaven, where the entire Leafman army is standing ready. Nod warns them that the Bogans will arrive any moment. Nimgalu places the bud on the castle's peak and waits for the moonlight to appear. Seeing the bud's blooming time approaching, Note emotionally bids Marie farewell, knowing that once the bud blooms, Marie will return to her true form. Suddenly, a swarm of thousands of bats fills the sky, completely obscuring the canopy's light, causing the bud to wither due to the lack of light. Seeing this, Nod and all the Leafman soldiers risk their lives and begin a fierce aerial battle to break the bats' circle and stop the Bogans. Mary also considers joining the battle, but Nimgalu warns her that if she wants to return home, she must be there for the bud when it blooms. Then Mary realizes she needs her father, Professor Baum, to help her through this crisis. She mounts the bird and flies to her father's home. Meanwhile, the moonlight is blocked and the bud begins to bloom in darkness, a sign of doom. Mary screams in front of her father's cameras, but the professor, in shock, thinks it's an illusion and turns off the cameras. Mary refuses to give up and goes to different cameras to signal them. Just then, a Bogan soldier attacks Mary. Meanwhile, the professor notices the map where Mary left a mark and realizes everything. He heads straight for the location and OG eats the Bogans, attacking Mary. The professor picks Mary up and listens to her voice using his special device. Mary apologizes for her behavior and the professor says, "I got your message, aha." Mary tells them to follow her so they can clear the path for the moonlight. Mandrake approaches Cuddly inside the palace, where Nimgalu and Mub try unsuccessfully to stop him. Ronan arrives inside the palace and confronts Mandrake. Outside, Mary, with the help of her father, Professor Baum, uses a special sound device. She records the sound of bats and plays it in reverse, and this confuses the bats and forces them to move away from the moon and follow the professor. Inside the palace, Mandrake begins to overpower Ronan, but Nod arrives to help. As the sky clears, the moon's full light falls on the magical bud. Ronan and Nod together push Mandrake back with all their might, burying him in his own debris within a tree's hollow, destroying the boggins. As the bud blooms, the entire forest becomes green again, and the magical power emanating from the bud is absorbed into the little girl flower bud, making her the new queen. All the leafmen bow in respect to the new queen. Nod thinks Mary has returned to her world. Just then Mary arrives. However, the bud's blooming time's about to end. The new queen uses her special powers to return Mary to her true human form, Diextiform. Professor Baum is overjoyed to find his daughter safe and sound and to learn that his research was completely correct. Mary eventually lives with her father in the forest, assisting him in his research. She communicates with Nod and Mub through the professor's special cameras and devices.